told a story on me. I'm going to tell one on him. He talked about his phone. Well, last year, his son Barry decided to buy him a smartphone. And he put all kind of programs and apps on it and put a ringtone on it for him. And that phone mysteriously went missing after a couple weeks, and because Curtis didn't like to use it. And he said he lost it and could never find it, and so they went and got him another flip phone. And then that thing showed up in the closet in one of his shoes. So I don't know what became of that thing, but he got rid of it. Well, good morning. If you would, open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 9. We're going to begin looking at a verse there. I believe that our clicker is going to be up here on this podium. All right. A lot of you probably have a favorite verse about evangelism, something that just really means a lot to you as it relates to sharing the gospel. And this one is that passage for me. Matthew chapter 9, starting in verse 35. And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered like sheep, having no shepherd. And he said to his disciples, "The harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest, send out the laborers into his harvest." The theme for this whole weekend is "Go ye" means go me. Of course, that's a very well-known book that was written about evangelism, but we're going to talk about a lot of the newer sort of evangelism techniques that come through social media and various forms of the internet. But unless our desire in life is to go out and be one of those few laborers, none of this is going to matter. There has to be that desire within our heart to share the gospel with people before any of this matters. And so I hope we'll have that as a foundational point as we begin this discussion this morning. I'm going to show you a few images here. A photographer named Eric Pickersgill took pictures several years ago, and you may have seen this online. And he took all these images and he cropped out the smartphones and tablets to see what was left. You can see this first image here. It's a family sitting around the dinner table. The tablets have been removed from the boys' hands, the smartphones from the parents. Here it's a mother and a daughter sitting on a couch. Here, this one always sort of gets me. Newlywed couple, just married, both looking at smartphones. And the more we look at these pictures, the sillier they're going to become, because here in what should be some of the most important human interactions that we have in life, there's no interaction because we're consumed with our digital devices. Another example. And this is the one that, sort of a reminder that this is not just having to do with younger people. Older people are certainly just as much involved in this as younger ones. This is the one that really strikes a chord with me, because it's supposed to be a cookout, and you see mom sitting on the tailgate on her device, dad about to probably burn himself with his device. But look at the kid. A nice cookout on a Saturday afternoon, burgers and franks on the grill, everything's supposed to be great. Mom and dad are so consumed with their technology that there's a little boy wanting some attention, wanting some interaction with his parents, and he can't get it. This photographer was inspired by a chance encounter in a cafe. This is what he said. He said, "Families sitting next to me at the Ilium Cafe in Troy, New York, were so disconnected from one another." He said in his notes that day, he said, "Not much talking. Father and two daughters have their phones out. Mom doesn't have one or chooses to put it away. She stares out the window, sad and alone in the company of her family. Dad looks up every so often to announce some piece of info he found online." Unfortunately, pictures like this are not very rare. They're the norm. And I think that all of us are probably guilty from time to time of falling into that same trap. I've been preaching almost 10 years now, and I never thought that I would at any point be preaching with a phone in my pocket. But like many of you, I don't go anywhere without this. Lest there be some emergency, some message that needs to be dealt with, we are attached to these like a lifeline. And so, what is it then that we have to do understanding this? One thing we can do is we can sort of rail against it if we want to, right? We can say, I reject that and I'm going to do things the old-fashioned way, and I'm still going to go and do the same things that I've always done evangelistically. I'm still going to go and knock doors, and we're still going to use the open Bible study, and we're still going to show Jewel Miller film strips, and we're going to do those exact same things. I don't care what the world says. And maybe that's okay. But the way that the world works is continuing to change. One guy who wrote a book called Socialnomics about the changing effect that social media has on our society, he says that social media isn't a fad, it is a fundamental shift in the way that we communicate. It's the way that people interact now. It's not this personal interaction that we're so accustomed to. We communicate with each other digitally now. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily excited about it, but that's just the way the world works. One of my favorite things to go and look up on YouTube is kids using old technology. There's actually a whole channel devoted to it, and they'll take these kids ages 5 or 6 up to about 11 or 12, and they'll show them technology that you and I were accustomed to. My favorite one is called Kids Use a Rotary Phone. So they take this rotary phone and they give it to these children and they say, "What is this?" And they try. They say, "All right, make a phone call," and they're spinning all the numbers. They have no idea how it works. They plug it in and the kid picks it up and hears the dial tone and goes, "What is that noise?" Kids growing up now don't know what a dial tone even is. It's an amazing, changing world that we live in. One of them that was really funny, they gave them a Walkman and a cassette player. And just watching the kids try to jam that tape or that cassette into the... Things have changed. And we don't want to be left behind in the changing world. So here are some statistics about social media and the way that we communicate. Nearly 75% of all adults use social media. So let's put that to the test this morning. And I know that we have a little bit older audience. How many in here have at least one social media account, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever it might be? That's pretty close, isn't it? 75%. Among 18 to 24-year-olds, raise your hand if you're between 18 and 24 in this room. Small crowd. How old are you guys? Okay, 16 and 24. Raise your hand. All right. Among that crew, 98%. You guys have at least one social media profile? What about you? It's 100% in our room. 98% of people 18 to 24 have a social media account. We say, where are the young people in the church going? Why can't we reach the millennials? Well, it's because they're on social media hiding from us, right? Mobile accounts, so those phones that I just showed you, account for 80% of the time spent on social media networks. People don't have to pull out a laptop or go to a desktop anymore. We have the fastest, most proficient computer in the world sitting in our pocket, right? The average user has 7 social media accounts. Mobile devices, the one right above that, account for more than half of all YouTube views. Listen to this. Ad spend, so buying advertising time on social media is on pace to outgrow TV ad spend for the first time. Think about that. More people are going to see advertisements on their phone or on their computer than they are on the television. One of our deacons works in the television industry, and he and I had a conversation the other day about advertising. And we were talking about how much it costs to run a commercial. And he said that, well, this is the number that it costs. He said, but really when you buy that commercial, that's okay, but what you're really paying for are the digital impressions. Because when people within your network are watching something on their phone, whether it's ESPN.com or YouTube that always runs ads before you can watch a video, that's where people are reaching their audience. The average person, listen to this, spends 3.5 hours a day on social media. Teenagers sometimes spend up to 9 hours every day on social media. These are not exceptions. These are not rare cases. This is the average based on respondents to a survey. I've got this thing up here, and I know it's back there, but I can't see it. So I'll just kind of show you what's going on these little charts. This is from the Pew Research Group, and they're one of the foremost research groups out there. This is the majority of Americans using Facebook and YouTube. So 72% of all Americans use YouTube to watch videos. 68% of all Americans use Facebook. These are some of the other things: Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the WhatsApp. So those are kind of who uses those. This is interesting to me too. This is talking about different age groups, and so trying to break it down among what's popular. So if you notice here, this is the over 50 group. The over 50 group is on what? It's Bible class. You can talk. What are the over 50s on? YouTube and Facebook. Listen, Facebook is my favorite social media platform. I love Facebook for a variety of reasons. To me, it's the most user-friendly. It's been in the news lately for some data issues, but Facebook is great. I'm 32. I still consider myself pretty young. Facebook is for older people. If I want to communicate with the teenagers at our congregation, you don't do it on Facebook. They use Instagram and Snapchat and other things we probably aren't even aware of. Facebook is for the older generation to communicate, and that's okay. YouTube as well is popular among older generations. And then we look here at the younger groups. They continue to use YouTube. 94% of 18 to 24-year-olds, 80% of those use Facebook, but there's 78% of the younger generation uses Snapchat, 71% use Instagram, and then 45% use Twitter. But aren't these remarkable numbers, though? Think about that almost 80% of people in that 18 to 24 range that we're so keen on reaching are communicating through Snapchat. How many of you know what Snapchat even is? Okay, a couple. How many of you only know it because a school counselor or somebody told you how awful it was? It's scary. We had the district attorney. My wife works for the district attorney's office in Pickens County. So if you ever get in trouble in Pickens County, we'll do our best to get you out of it. But she works there, and we had the district attorney come and talk to our young people and teenagers about the dangers of social media, and particularly Snapchat. Snapchat's an app where you send a picture or a text and it goes away immediately. Yet people forget that there's this thing on our phone called a screenshot, where you can screenshot those things and save them. And so lots of trouble has been caused. But 80% of our 18 to 24-year-olds are still on it. So before we get to that, I want to look at this in two ways in the time we have left. What time do I have to quit, David? 10:15. All right. I probably won't, but I asked. I think it's important that we look at this in two ways. We're already at the point where we realize that our world communicates through social media, through digital means. And most of the time, it's not even email anymore. Email is almost becoming outdated. So what do we do then as Christians? We have this message that we want to get out there to the world. What do we do? And I want to look at it in two ways. The first thing that I want to look at is, what do we do as churches? A lot of you here are church leaders in various ways. Maybe you serve on an eldership. Maybe you're a deacon. Maybe your area of work is technology. Maybe you're here for this lectureship and you're a preacher. So what do we do as church leaders in a position where we're trying as our sole purpose to get the message out? And this is a plan, and this is what I call the FIT YouTube plan. FIT, FIT YouTube plan. I think this is one of the most comprehensive ways that we can take this message out while still keeping it pretty simple. And before we even get into the FIT part of it, here's something. It's one of my soapboxes. church websites. Visitors will decide whether or not they're going to come visit your congregation in just a few seconds based on the way your church website looks. And let me say this before we even get to that. In 2018, there is absolutely no excuse for a church to not have a website. That's just the way we find things. Butch Jones, who is one of our preachers up at LJ as well, most of you know Butch, he came in my office the other day. He said, "Do you have a phone book?" And I looked at him and I said, "What? A phone book?" He said, "Yeah, the yellow pages." "No, I don't have a phone book. I have Google." And so we just look at things differently. But somebody, if they're going to figure out and they're traveling, they come to Marietta and they say, "I've got to find somewhere to go to church in Marietta on Sunday." They're going to Google Church of Christ, Marietta, Georgia. And they're going to come up and they're going to see a variety of websites. And more than likely, whichever website is more appealing is the congregation they're going to visit that day. Even more importantly, somebody in our community might hear about, well, what's the Church of Christ? And they want to go and they want to find out about us. They're going to go to our website. And so it's important that we have things that are important. And this is just the truth. Looks matter as it relates to church websites. If we have a website that looks old, nobody's going to pay attention to it. We need websites that look modern and up to date, and there's a reason that professionals do that. You've heard the expression, "you get what you pay for"? That's never more true than in church websites. So what you have to do is either, number one, have a webmaster that you pay to do that. And that's problematic for another reason that we're going to look at in a second. Or you have somebody that is within your congregation that has a particular skill set, and you let them handle it. All of us have people in our congregations that are skilled. Michael Kingsley, sitting right here, works on computers every day. There are people like him sitting in our pews that we need to use. If you get hit up after this, I'm sorry, but we need to make sure that it looks good. It needs to be visually appealing. Secondly, it needs to be user-friendly. Websites that are hard to navigate or hard to deal with don't work. We need to have on all of our websites mobile plugins so that if somebody's looking at our website on a smartphone, they can use it without having to be on a laptop or a desktop. Thirdly, they need to have relevant content. They need to have relevant content. If somebody goes to our church website and they don't see the address and a phone number, we've messed up, right? And this is something, and I don't know about Piedmont Road's website or any other website or anything like that, but there's a trend among churches now to not put a phone number on the church website. Because we're going to get crazy phone calls and we're going to get all this, and we just don't want to have to deal with all that. So they have what's called a contact form, and you can fill it out and send it, and it'll go through email. And that's a really smart idea. But the idea that churches would like to distance themselves from people seeking something is abhorrent to what the gospel teaches. We need to have our phone numbers. Preachers, put your emails. I know you're going to have to deal with some crazy emails. We need to be accessible to people. We need to have our phone numbers and our emails and our address and what's going on where people can find us when they need us. We need to have who we are. We need to have our church leaders visible. So if somebody comes and they say, "I want to know who the preacher is," that should be easy to find. Elderships should be accessible on church websites. We need to have that pertinent information. People should be able to figure out what we stand for when they look at our website. We need to have sermons. We need to have bulletins. We need to have content on our website. We'll talk more about bulletins in a second. But those things, we have to have relevant content on our website if we expect people to interact with it. And then the last thing about church websites, and we'll move on, is they have to be updated. I spend a lot of time browsing different church websites, trying to look at things and figure out things and have conversations with people and build relationships. And a lot of times you'll go to something. I use that bulletin as an example. A lot of congregations keep their bulletin private where only members can access. And I think that's a very good thing for privacy's sake. We don't do that. As a rule at LJ, we don't publish people's addresses or phone numbers or private type things in the bulletin. we'll post that on a bulletin board or something, but we do make our bulletins public where people can see what's going on. If I go to a website and I see a bulletin tab and I click on it, and the last bulletin updated was from February of 2015, that makes me wonder about that congregation. And that church may be the most vibrant, active, working church in the community and might just not be very tech savvy, but if I'm looking at it from the outside, I think this is a church that's dying or struggling or can't handle what it needs to handle. So the church website is our most important first interaction with people, and it needs to be taken care of. That's a little soapbox for today. So the fit YouTube plan. The first thing, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. That's the fit. These are without a doubt the three most popular forms of social media that we have. Facebook. I just want to share a few things with you. Every day, people view 100 million hours of video on Facebook throughout the world. Over 1 billion, that's billion with a B, people are on Facebook and look at this much video every single day. There are more than 50 million businesses using a Facebook business page. And Facebook ad revenue in the U.S. is expected to outpace total print ad spending by 2019. The days of you getting that Sunday paper and every ad you could ever want to imagine being in there are slowly but surely coming to an end. Now those ads will be on Facebook. 2019, by the way, is next year. It's not something that's far, far away. And so Facebook is the perfect place. Facebook, every congregation should have a Facebook page that should be updated constantly. Lots of churches have gone now to streaming their events live on Facebook, and I think that's wonderful, and I hope you do it. But please do it where people can hear it. Lots of times I'll go and look at a Facebook video and somebody has just stuck a smartphone in a little holster and they're recording, which is great, except you can't hear anything that's being said or talked about. If you're going to Facebook Live, make sure that you have the microphone hooked into the computer that's broadcasting it. But Facebook is a great place. You can have a Facebook group. At LJ, we have a whole bunch of Facebook groups. We have our small groups that are called care teams. Our care team that myself and one of our deacons head up has its own Facebook group where we can communicate with each other. The youth group has its own group. Our young professionals group has its own Facebook group. We have a Facebook page that's public where we update things. So all those things on Facebook can be taken care of. And here's the coolest thing about sharing the gospel on Facebook. They have this little button when you post something that says boost. We had an outreach campaign in LJ last week, and I'm going to talk about it here actually during the summer series if you're going to be here. But we filmed a commercial that aired on our local cable channel. We put it on YouTube, but what we decided to do was boost it on Facebook. So myself, I filmed one, and Butch filmed one, and we boosted those on Facebook, $100 a piece. We ended up having over 7,000 different people view those commercials and within a 25-mile radius of our zip code. What else can you do for $200 that reaches 7,000 people? Technology is beautiful, but we have to use it. And by the way, you can boost any post that you want to. Facebook, a huge, huge deal. A lot of you use Facebook. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but it's a very important resource for us to take advantage of. So Instagram. Pictures. So a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? Well, it's worth a lot more than that on Instagram. Instagram, you don't post a lot of things, you post pictures. And if you ever post a picture on Instagram, you need to use a hashtag. You need to use a hashtag. For some reason, adding that hashtag makes that so much more popular. And the reason is this. So let's say that I'm a preacher, and I type in the search bar of my Instagram profile, Evangelism. Well, if I've posted a picture of this GSOP Lectureship 2018 and I've put hashtag evangelism, guess what's going to pop up when I go and view that? And so people can figure out what's going on just by searching that word, evangelism. The majority, well, let's talk about Instagram stories. So Instagram went up in popularity when they started doing these things called stories. So you can do something, a short video, pictures, whatever it might be, and you can click add to story. And at the very top of the Instagram profile will be stories, and you can click and watch those. They're very easily accessible. Some of you right now, your head is spinning. It's okay.
By the way, the hashtag is the pound sign.
Yes, if you don't know what a hashtag is, that's the pound sign. Don't be like some people who think it's hash brown. It's not hash brown, hashtag. The majority of users are between 18 and 29. That's the group that we really, really want to reach out to, that millennial group, right? They're on Instagram. Women use Instagram more than men. I don't know why that is. It's just a fact. And it's pretty substantially so. More women use it. So we need to have Instagram. Post a picture on your Instagram profile. Have whoever is in charge of your technology have an Instagram profile on a phone, tablet, and use it. Allocation of resources in this department is very important. At LJ, we have 2 deacons whose sole responsibility is technology. And I guarantee you, if they could, they would ask for a third. They handle our sound room, they handle the lights and the audio, video, they handle all that, but they also handle, in conjunction with myself and a couple other people, our social media. And so they go and they publish all these things for us. So very important to use the resources. The third part of that FIT plan is Twitter. I'll just tell you, I don't know that there's a ton of research to back this up, but I think that Twitter is probably in its last days. It continues to decline in popularity. But Twitter, over 80% of users access Twitter on their phones. So not a lot of people are getting on an actual computer and using Twitter. 80% use it on their phone. 81% of that millennial group check their Twitter account every single day. Whether they're following a celebrity or just watching a silly video, Twitter is there. And I thought this was interesting. So on Twitter, you can only use 140 characters. A lot of preachers use Twitter to give sort of a short synopsis of their sermon the following day and tweet it. But tweets with pictures are 150% more likely to be retweeted than those without it. Retweeted means you just share it so that your followers can see it. And so if I was preparing a sermon, I might have the title slide for my sermon with, hey, come tomorrow and hear a lesson from Isaiah 53. And you tweet that, and it's out there for people to see and can draw interest. And then YouTube. YouTube, folks, is the king of content. My wife and I, when we moved to LJ, cut the cord with cable. I was tired of paying for it. We got up there, and the local cable company is a little more expensive than some other places, being a small town, and it's a great company, great people, good internet prices, but the cable is just more expensive, and that's because these networks are charging cable companies more. So we cut the cord with cable. Well, in December, they came out with this thing called YouTube TV. $35 a month, and you have every major cable network as well as local channels at your disposal. So I can pull out my phone right now and go to YouTube TV and watch the Atlanta news on my phone. Have cable anywhere I want to go for a fraction of the cost of local cable networks. YouTube TV, I believe, is going to take over the cable network. In a few years, there'll be no such thing as just plain old cable. YouTube is the king of content. You can back that up by looking at these statistics. In an average month, 8 out of 10 18 to 49-year-olds watch YouTube. That's 80%. You can navigate YouTube in 76 different languages. That encompasses 95% of the entire internet population. 300 hours of video are uploaded every minute. 300 hours every single minute. That's a mind-boggling number. And how about this one? People view 1 billion hours of YouTube videos across the world every single day. YouTube is a very dangerous thing because you can end up going down what I call the YouTube rabbit hole. You'll click on a video that says how to cook pork chops. You're getting dinner, you want a good recipe, and you watch it. And 6 hours later, you're watching Emeril Lagasse's show that you never, and you go, where'd the time go? Because there's a video literally for everything on YouTube. YouTube is putting the handyman out of business. When I want to fix my lawnmower, I don't take it to the local John Deere dealership because I'm not a millionaire. I go and I watch a YouTube video and I try to fix it myself. There's a YouTube video literally for everything. And that's why it has become king. And so YouTube is very important for our churches. This lesson right now, if I'm not mistaken, is being live streamed on YouTube. Is it not, David? At LJ, we live stream everything using what's called the Ustream app on our church website. And as soon as it is finished publishing, is immediately uploaded to YouTube. So you can go to our LJ Church of Christ YouTube channel and view every lesson that's taught. That includes all our Bible classes, all our services, and all of our special events. It's important that we stay connected in that way. And somebody can go and they can say, you know what, I want to know what this unforgivable sin is about. So somebody types in their YouTube search bar, the unpardonable or unforgivable sin. And maybe, just maybe, if we've preached a sermon about it, it comes up and that person learns what that is just because we had the wherewithal to upload it to YouTube. So churches, I think it's important that we use the Fit YouTube plan or some variation of it as part of our overall communication strategy. And let me say this before we move on. I'm not saying that we need to do away with every other way that we do things. I'm not saying never use the house-to-house, heart-to-heart mailer, for instance. I love the house-to-house, heart-to-heart mailer. We used it for our campaign that we just had and got a lot of contacts from it. I think it's great. I think it's a great way to contact people, especially if they're not rabid internet users. I'm not saying do away with tracts. I'm not saying do away with any of the traditional ways that we've done things. I'm saying add this to that so that we can have a more well-rounded way of communicating with people. Fit YouTube plan. So what about my personal social media evangelism? People have asked me all the time, why do we have such trouble getting people to evangelize? There's a really simple answer to that. It's because it's uncomfortable. We don't like it. It makes us nervous. A spy was once captured by the Persian army. And the general of the army looked at the spy and said, you have two choices. You can be executed by firing squad, or you can go and see what's behind this big black door. Well, immediately the spy said, I know what the firing squad is about, and he chose to be executed by firing squad, so they put him there and blindfolded him, and the firing squad executed him. The aide of this Persian general went up to him and he said, you know, every time that you execute somebody, they always choose the firing squad. What's actually behind that black door? The general went and opened the door. It was a path to the outside. He said, behind this door is freedom. He said, but people are so petrified of the unknown that they never choose it. Folks, getting outside of our comfort zone is our big black door. That's the very simple reason that we don't do it, is because of the fear of the unknown and the fear of rejection. And so we've got to get beyond that, and we have to have our own personal plan. So in the age of social media, what's my personal evangelism thing? I think there's three things we have to remember, and for time's sake, we're just going to run through these really quickly. On your social media profiles, the first thing is remember not to say too much. Remember not to say too much. Proverbs 29:11, you can jot that down and go read it later, is a very important verse to go along with this. Don't say too much. Last night I was watching basketball like most of you were, and LeBron James, who in my estimation is the greatest basketball player to ever lace up a pair of sneakers. I know that's sacrilege to some of you, but you're wrong. And he hit one of the most amazing acrobatic shots that I've ever seen, and immediately I wanted to pull up my Facebook and go, ha ha, take that, haters. You know. But we can't do that. This year, Auburn and Georgia played in the regular season. If you remember what happened, Auburn won that game 41-17. And I was going through my mind all the things that I could put on Facebook and say, because I've been barked at more in the last 3 years than I ever thought that I would be by Georgia fans. But I didn't do that because it was Saturday. You know what the next day was? Sunday. And what happened on Sunday was much more important than what happened on Saturday. And plus, Auburn and Georgia never played again, and nothing else happened after that, so it doesn't matter. But we need to remember not to say too much, because we can be as spiritual as we want to be. But if everything else that we share is dealing with nonsense that doesn't matter and using curse words. People are going to say, why in the world would I want to listen to anything that person has to say about faith? Remember not to say too much. Remember not to share things that are overly personal on your social media profile. A lot of people put allusion to things that people can read between the lines. Frustrated husbands put, we really ought to think this remarriage thing. And immediately the wife gets messaged and goes, I'm so sorry, what's going on? Remember not to say too much. Secondly, remember to set boundaries. This is so important as it relates to social media. Remember to set boundaries. There's no reason for us to be on social media past 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Nothing good can happen. We've got to remember to set boundaries in the way that we do things. I remember during this last political cycle that Mike Pence was made fun of and ridiculed a lot because he made a public statement that he never spent any time in a room alone with another woman. He refused to be in a room alone with a woman. And people made fun of him and they ridiculed him. But one by one, as people in Washington are having to resign their post amid sexual misconduct allegations, he's looking a lot smarter, isn't he? We've got to remember to have boundaries in our lives. And then thirdly, we need to remember it's not real. A lot of people look at social media and they say, you know what? People just have it so much better than me. Everybody else's life is just, what happens on social media is not real. We need to make sure that we understand that. All right, in the last couple minutes, my personal social media evangelism. The first thing I have here is the come and see method. Turn over to John 1 with me really quickly. John chapter 1. John chapter 1, and I'd like to get into the whole story, but we'll just look at verse 46. Nathanael said to him, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And Philip said to him, come and see. Inviting people to come and hear the gospel is a great first step in our personal evangelism. And we can do that on social media simply by sharing something that our church publishes. I think that's a great start, the come and see method. Thirdly, the private study method. I preached last Sunday from John chapter 3 about the story of Jesus and Nicodemus. And we don't really know all the details about why Nicodemus did this, but it says Nicodemus came to him when? At night. And even though it was private, he and Jesus had a great study about what it means to enter into the new birth, being washed in water and in spirit. So, or born of water and spirit. So that's one of the ways, is just having one-on-one private studies. Sometimes that can happen through Facebook message. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people will not, as a matter of fact, a majority of the time, people will not come to our church buildings. But they may talk to us one-on-one. Thirdly, the take a risk method. I'm not going to repeat a sermon from you from John chapter 4. I know that Cliff preached from there yesterday, and I know he did a masterful job as he always does. But here's the important part. We've got to be willing to take a risk from time to time, like Jesus did with that woman at the well. And sometimes that involves doing things that are way outside our comfort zone. Social media cannot be a tool just to make us more comfortable and lazier. It has to be a tool to further advance what we do. I want to read a verse with you one more time from Matthew chapter 9. Matthew chapter 9, verse 35. Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness among the people. And when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd. And he said to his disciples, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Bow and have a word of prayer with me, if you would. God, we're so thankful for this opportunity and for this weekend and for this discussion about evangelism. Father, we know that social media is a very nuanced way that we're still learning about to share the gospel, but we thank you for it. Father, we know that nothing will ever replace studying one-on-one with people and sitting down and having that conversation. But Father, we pray that these things that we've discussed this morning will be aids in helping us to establish and build those relationships so that can be possible. Father, help us to have a love for the lost, a compassion for the lost like your Son did. Help us to cultivate that, help that desire to grow within us so that we can be pleasing to you. Be with us throughout the rest of this day, and above everything, we thank you for salvation that comes through your Son. It's in his mighty name we pray. Amen.